are going to have two fantastic speakers. We'll have Eugenia Planas, who is the CIO for Markets, Banking and Payments, and Karrista Rayment, who is the RTGS Technology Service Owner at the Bank of England. And both of them are the duo behind 730 billion pound settled daily. And that's not a mistake, not million, billion. And they've modernized the infrastructure from legacy mainframes to cloud-ready 24/7 operating platforms. And their talk is going to be from legacy to the leading edge and the tech behind UK's payment modernization. Please give a round of warm welcome to our speakers for this next session.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Eugenia Planas. I'm, as Philip said, the CIO for Banking, Payments, Markets and Resolution at the Bank of England. And we just wanted to start by telling you a little bit of, just check the clicker, there we go, a little bit of what the bank does. So the bank is the central bank for the UK. And the bank's mission, which we all live and breathe by, and it's really almost like tattooed as we go in on the first day, it's to promote the good of the people of the United Kingdom by maintaining financial and monetary stability. And the way that we do that is we do things like setting the bank rate, interest rate, we define policy, we supervise firms, and also the reason why we're here today is that we provide the infrastructure that's needed for the financial services in the UK to run properly. My role is effectively running all of the infrastructure for markets, banking, payments, and so on. And I'll hand over to Kay to talk about her role in payments.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Karrista Rayment. I get called Karrista if I'm in trouble. Otherwise, I get called Kay. And I'm accountable for all of the technology that underpins the real-time gross settlement system.
So our talk today will focus mainly around wholesale payments and the role that technology has had in supporting the roadmap of modernization that both the bank and the industry are on. If we've got a bit of time at the end, we'll talk also a bit about what we're doing around retail payments and the thinking in there and specifically the design around the digital pound. So, what is RTGS, I hear you ask? So RTGS really is the infrastructure that sits at the heart of the financial services infrastructure in the UK. It provides real-time transfer of payments between financial institutions settled in central bank money, which means that it gives us final and risk-free settlement. And if you don't speak financial services, what that means is every single electronic transaction made in pounds, be it by a house or by a newspaper, is ultimately settled in the UK, in RTGS. Now, oh no, okay. Sorry, I'm just gonna, I think the order is a bit messy, so I'm just gonna go with all of them. So up at the top, the system settles up to £1 trillion, but on a normal day, it will settle, as Philip said, £750 billion. And if you don't trade in pounds, what that means is it's equivalent to the gross ticket sales of around 400 Taylor Swift Eras tours, so just for the younger generation. What type of transactions? So CHAPS is, which is a high-value transaction system, basically settles 0.4% of the volume, but 91% of the value. And again, just to give you a view, that means it turns over the whole of the UK GDP every 7 days. All of that means that the system is considered critical national infrastructure, because ultimately of the role that it plays and how much of a cornerstone it is for the financial services. And we'll talk about what that means for the design a bit and the security a bit later on. Other things that it does, CREST, which is UK securities, but also we do the net settlement for a number of retail payments, BACS, Visa, and so on. 38 banks, building societies, and other financial institutions use it. And the reason why we're here today is because effectively the original real-time gross settlement was built and had very few changes since 1996. Again, to give you a view, the original coding language for it was COBOL, which had been around since 1959. So that doesn't scream modern. And the last bit is also that we have, we have a system that's critical national infrastructure. It's a cornerstone for the financial services. It underpins the bank's mission of financial and monetary stability. So it has a teeny tiny bit of governance around it. And effectively, one of the things that we've done, and we'll talk about it, is try to simplify and streamline that governance to allow us for the new system to make sure that we can keep up with the pace of innovation that the industry asks of us. So that's about RT. So why change, other than the fact that the system is probably older than many of you here in the room? There were probably 5 main shifts in the industry that really acted as a catalyst for driving the change, and then they also helped us shape the vision. So the first one was around the fact that the user needs and expectations have really transformed, because the way that businesses and retails make payments has transformed. If you think 25 years ago, probably about 40% of the payments were made using cash, whereas now that's dropped to less than 15%, at least in the UK. So we had to really, and from point of view of electronic payments, those expectations of the users, 24/7, they want instantaneous settlement, they want really context-rich information for every single transaction. So we really had to get the new RTGS to adapt to all of that. We've provided better user interfaces, we've provided improved liquidity management tools, and automated access via APIs. And why is that important? Because the easier and the more flexible and the better suited to the needs that the system is, the more likely that it's to drive user adoption, and through user adoption, we drive growth. And obviously, growth is a big, big objective of the industry. Now, another key driver was the fact that the number of payments operators had increased because the payments ecosystem had expanded beyond your traditional banks to include other institutions like fintech, non-bank PSPs, and international players. So if we wanted to really support and drive competition, we had to give more intermediaries direct access to settling with central bank money. The way we did that was through streamlining onboarding, and also through improving and enhancing the number of participants and account holders within the system. Again, what that did, by providing greater access, we were able to reduce tiering risk. We improved innovation because the new participants bring that with them, and we are promoting that level of competition and driving growth through competition. Another big trend in the industry was this drive towards global interoperability and standards. So the new RTGS supports ISO 20022, if I say that right, which provides a lot richer data within the messaging transactions. But what it also does is it enables the UK to remain interoperable in global financial markets infrastructures, and to really remain competitive in cross-border payments. So really promoting and supporting the role that the UK wants to play as a key player within the financial industry, the finance industry. Another key theme, and obviously we cannot not talk about this, are the technical advancements. So we have things like APIs, cloud-native infrastructure, programmable money. All of these are things that a system that was built 20 years ago was not able to leverage. So it couldn't really bring the capabilities and the ways of working that we needed to implement to make sure that it, once built, it could really keep up with it. So the new RT has a much more modern core ledger and a new settlement engine. But we've also taken the opportunity to build a new operating system, a new operating model, which is based on a products and platform model, and it drives a really close partnership between the business and technology. So we are really removing or breaking the silos, we are accelerating decision-making, and we are reducing delivery risk. Because effectively what we're doing is making sure that what we're doing is aligned with strategic objectives in the business, and at the same time that it will be technical and operationally viable when we deploy. We've also done a new change and release management process, which has already seen 1,000 changes deployed into production, which really helps us in keeping, minimizing obsolescence risk, and also helps us by deploying all the changes that we need, both from a functional, but also from a security and resiliency point of view. And last but not least, as I mentioned, resiliency is a really big thing. And we've seen a big shift from a regulatory and a risk landscape towards a big emphasis from regulators, of which the bank is one of them, towards operational resiliency, systemic risk management, and things like increased data transparency. Now, as part of the new model, it supports all of these goals through increased controls and security and risk. We have an alignment with ISO, which we've talked about, that effectively drives that data transparency and traceability. And it also looks at how we can effectively improve synchronized transaction, synchronized settlement as well, from a point of view of resiliency. And in a context of increased cyber threats and high-value payments, really maintaining that uninterrupted settlement is absolutely key to maintaining the confidence in the financial system in the UK, and in turn driving that monetary and policy and financial stability that the bank is driving for. And with that, I'll hand over to Kay to tell us all about how we've turned this into something real.
Thank you. So what we essentially did, we took those puzzle pieces, we took the vision, and we turned it into a technical blueprint. And we agreed a series of design principles, and some of them particularly focused around security, resiliency, and data integrity. And it wasn't enough just to do a tech transformation. We also decided to deploy this service into brand new data centers. So we literally built from the ground up everything from our networks, our storage, all the way through the tech stack up to the user interfaces. And the total ecosystem now has around 250 components and subcomponents that make up the entirety of the RTGS service. So if we start in the middle, that's primarily where all of our key products are sitting. We've mentioned the core settlement engine, and that is fundamentally the heart of the system. That's where all of the payments come in. They settle, the money moves between the accounts. Obviously, there's lots of other products that we've got sitting in there that allow us to connect to the outside world and also to the wider organisation, because there's a lot of integration that needs to happen, and we need to make sure that that integration is secure. And particularly when the data is in transit, we want to make sure that it's encrypted. And then if we move from products and we move to look at the platforms, we needed to make sure that we could build a reliable and resilient platform. So we have these geographically diverse data centers, and in doing that, we run in a hot configuration, and we have no single component that can take down the platform. That was one of our key design principles. And so whilst we have the resiliency wider in the data center form, we also have it within the data centers. So we wanted to make sure that within the data center itself that we're running from, we have lots of layers of resiliency, so whether we're running various clusters, etc. And obviously data integrity, I mentioned, that's really key for us as well. You imagine you are settling the country's currency. So you have to ensure that everything is accounted for, nothing goes missing, nothing gets injected in. So we built an immutable database, and that's what would be used in a court of law if anyone raised a dispute over payments going missing or not happening as they expected. And we also have the ability to use that in a recovery scenario. So if one of our components stops working, because let's be honest, technology doesn't work perfectly all the time, then we can use the data from that immutable database and we can replay that into a fresh build of the component. Now, moving on to DevOps and tooling, this was a really big step change for the bank, particularly when we started this program, which was a long time ago. We saw the benefits of it, so we made sure that we embedded it throughout the design and throughout the service. And we've used it across the board, so whether that's for security patching or scanning or our build or images. But some of the really good examples that we've had was around our old system. For example, if we wanted to move from one data center to another data center, it was an incredibly manual process. And it would take about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to do. Now, obviously, when you're running that type of service, you can't really have that long of an outage, right? Because the whole country stops, money stops flowing. If we're out long enough, then Europe gets affected, the US gets affected, the Far East gets affected. So we have to try and make it as quick as possible. And DevOps pipelines that we used allowed us to essentially make that transition now automated all the way through, stopping the databases on one site, moving the service across, starting up on the other side, and now we can do that in under 15 minutes. The other thing that we've really invested in is the automation of our testing. With our previous system, as we said, it was monolithic, not only to do the development, but to do the testing on. And things would take days, weeks, months, years to get through the testing. Whereas now we've got a complete automation test suite. We basically click the button at the end of the day, we all go home, go to bed, come back in, and it's all run. And we've run anywhere between 70 and 100,000 tests. So we can now deliver our changes in hours or days rather than weeks and years. But with automation, we didn't want to stop there. We didn't just want it to be a kind of a technology tool. So we worked with our business areas and we said, okay, take us through all your processes. And we basically automated as much as we could so that actually that meant not only the tech staff, but the business staff could actually be doing value-add activities rather than kind of like daily checks and stuff like that. So we're really proud of that piece. We talk about security up on the top left. As you can imagine, because of what the system does, there's really high levels of security that's needed for critical national infrastructure. Now, the bank works very closely with government agencies in the UK and cybercrime units across the country as well. And we have a lot of security protocols, and even more so than you would probably see in a standard organisation. And one of the key decisions that we made was we created a completely segregated network from the rest of the bank. So we want to be air-gapped. So in the event, we all know cyber is a big thing. We have another layer of controls with this segregated network, different laptops, all sorts. And also to support us in that venture, we have our own internal cyber division who are classed as world-class with all the accolades they at least tell us they've won. So they help us monitor the entire bank, but also particularly with RTGS. And then at the top there, we've got data. So I'm sure in a lot of industries, data is becoming ever more important. And in the payments industry, especially with ISO 2022 coming in, it gives a lot more richer data. So we need to be able to provide a platform to our internal users, our external users, to be able to analyze all of this data. So we work closely with the industry and with our internal users to understand what they were going to use this data for so that we could build the right type of platform, give them the right type of data. And that's also where we brought in the introduction of the API point. So the bank hadn't really done APIs previously, and now basically the externals can do direct API calls into our service. And we actually went live with the last phase in April, just a few months ago. And in the first 3 weeks, we saw a really great adoption. We had over 27 million API calls made into the service. So it was really good to see the industry was kind of picking up on this new capability. And then I think probably the key thing that I haven't mentioned here is around service. Now, if you've got a technical footprint across multiple data centers with all of these components, you've got to monitor the entire thing, right? And monitoring's come on a long way from maybe where it was 10 years ago. And one of the strategies that we had is we wanted one monitoring solution. We didn't want 10 over here for tech and another 5 over here for the business. So we spent a lot of time looking at all the various monitoring products that were out there. And we have the technical side of the monitoring, so that is receiving all the logs from all of the servers, the network, the databases, and alerting us to if there's any concerns, and it's all calibrated. We then overlay some contextual monitoring as well. So basically, we can start seeing early indications of problems. For example, if we're seeing X events in Y periods of time, then it will start off as like an amber alert, and then it will work its way up if we're starting to see more of it. So it gives us a lot more foresight into what's actually happening in the estate. And again, means you don't have to have people sitting there watching it anymore, because the alerts will come through, they'll call the engineers automatically through the systems, and it makes it a much more effective process. Now, with the business, they were typically used to going into an application, sitting there running jobs and watching it from the system itself. We wanted to move them away from that. We wanted to move them into the monitoring solution as well. So again, we worked with them to understand what's the type of things that they want to be able to see all the time. So we built dashboards for them that tracks the real-time payments coming in, the values that are going up, what the participants are doing, if there's any concerns with the industry. So they can have it basically on a big screen in the office or at home. And then again, they can focus the remainder of their time on more value-add pieces. And that was a big shift for them. Like, we've heard about culture being talked about a lot, and a part of the target operating model, we defined that new culture with them. And probably one of the cool things, I would say, from our monitoring piece, so we talk about the data integrity, we've talked about the immutable database that we have, but we actually have cross-database reconciliations that run every 30 seconds, basically checking that all the payments are in all the same databases to prove that nothing's been injected, either from externally or internally as well. And some of those, if it does find an anomaly, we'll just shut the system down, which is great in theory, but in practice, don't want that to happen because that's a lot of audit that comes afterwards. But all of that reports through our monitoring, and again, escalates as quickly as we need it to. So this is primarily how we kind of took those visions, we took the blueprint, we broke it down into these structures, and we built the new service. Now, we've finished that program now, and we've spent some time thinking about what were the key points that we wish we would have known at the beginning, because we started this maybe 9 years ago with the announcement that we were looking to do this, and it's been a long journey since. So in doing a massive technical kind of refresh, it's a great opportunity to look at the operating model. And we went full throttle on this. We looked at people, we looked at process, and obviously we were already looking at the technology point. And this is where we drove out that we wanted to move to the product and platform model, primarily because we wanted that continuous delivery. And we wanted to be able to stay out of obsolescence, because that's a pain, and we wanted to be able to innovate. But what we did is we didn't just look at the business users that were going to use the service or the tech users that were going to use the service. We went to speak every division in the bank. So whether that was HR or legal or internal audit or the risk division or the finance division, and we changed all of their processes as well. Because ultimately there is no point having a nice, shiny, up-to-date system if you haven't got those supporting processes behind you. If you want to do continuous delivery, you can't do that if you don't have a funding model from your organisation that will support it. And it took us about 2 years to kind of go around and work out how does all of this piece together, but it's really paid dividends in doing it. The other thing that was really key was program sponsorship. Now, this might seem really obvious, but there are times when you might just need to have someone at the top tell people what's going to happen. There's a thing about bringing people along on the journey. Absolutely, we're big advocates of that. But sometimes you just need that directive to come say, look, we are going to change the way you work. We're going to change the systems. We're going to change the processes. You need to kind of get on board. So that was really useful. The other thing that we did is in this undertaking, like I say, it was like a 9-year program. And if you think we're changing all of the infrastructure, everything, and all the people and processes, we partnered with Accenture as our technical delivery partner. And this worked really well. We were able to utilise their global expertise, but also the size of their workforce to work with our own in order to kind of bring this vision to life. So partnering is good in the right circumstance. Just make sure you pick the right partner, because I can imagine if you don't, that could be a difficult journey. And then this one was a real pain for me, right? The balance between security and operational ability. You'd have your cyber guys going, right, we want all of these controls in place, we want all of this locked down, no one can do anything, etc. And then I've got the operational team sitting there going, yeah, but now it takes me 20 minutes to do a job that used to take me 5. So there's a fine balance between making sure you've got the right level of security with the ability to use the system. So my advice would be, when you're doing your design stages and you've got your cyber guys in there, bring the operational people in. so that they can work together to, if cyber go, okay, we want this thing to happen, the operational teams can input their, like, this is what our process does, and therefore this is where we're going to find some problems with it. We found some of this too late and too late to undo. So, you know, at that point, you just have to live with it. You know, we'll look to improve it in the future, but I think it's a real lesson learned for us. And then additionally, we've talked about ISO 20022, so that's a new message schema. And basically, that's what fields can go in a transaction, and they get changed every year. Now, when we introduced ISO 20022, it wasn't just us that had to change, it was the entire industry. So we had to have all of the banks do all of their designs, their build, their testing, and their implementation in parallel to us, so that ultimately we ended up all going live on the same weekend. So 39 organisations, basically the majority of the UK banking sector, all had a massive go live over one weekend. So it was really key that we brought them in from the beginning. We understood what their plans were, they understood what we were asking of them, and we genuinely had open and tough sometimes conversations with them in order to make sure that we were all going to meet that end goal. Taking feedback from them to influence our own programme, and then ultimately it culminated in us having a very successful go live. So them being ready and able to go made our success even better. And probably the last 2 points, just going to talk on this side, resilience testing and dress rehearsals. So if I was to touch on resilience testing first, any large program is going to do a huge amount of testing. You have to do even more when you absolutely started from scratch, right? You know, you've built everything and configured every single piece of capability. We focused a lot on the resilience testing and business continuity, disaster recovery, whether that was failing over from data centers, etc. But we actually also introduced something called a chaos tool. So we had someone build it, and we basically deployed it into our non-production estate, and at any point, any day, it would just decide to shut a service down by itself. And it was, from a management perspective, it was a really cool tool, because we just like press the button and be like, something's going to happen soon. Best thing is the engineers didn't know. And it was a way for us to test our processes when you have a major incident, in order for them to identify, to triage, to test the monitoring and alerting, and then come together with the business, work out how to fix it and what operational procedures need to happen in order to recover. So I personally found that very fun. And then the last point on dress rehearsals. So for anyone who might not know what they are, that's essentially where you practice your implementation and your reversion of your technical capability, but also any business capability as well. So we had 2 big go-lives. One was in April, as I mentioned, and one was in 2023. And between those, we did about 9 dress rehearsals. It sounds like a lot, but my advice to you is do as many as your plan is going to allow. Because if you think, we had over 100 people involved in each of the weekends. We ran them in our non-production and in our production estates. And it was essentially a 24/7 operation with a lot of governance that sat around it. We had a run book that was 5,000 steps in it, and that was the high-level run book. Each team then had a lower-level run book. So if you think the SME knowledge and time that's needed to build all of those, you really shouldn't underestimate how long it takes to be able to get to a point where, like we did on our actual go-live, where it was incredibly smooth because we'd practiced it so many times. You want it to become muscle memory of all the people involved. You want to have worked out where all the issues and the kinks are, so that you don't actually find them on your go-live itself. Now that's the programme, and we've looked back and we've said, okay, what would we like to know and what would we be able to pass on? But also we're looking, okay, well, what's next? You know, we just spent a lot of money, we've just got this new innovative platform available to people, so we need to make sure that we continue moving forward. So we've worked closely with the industry to say, okay, what are the next type of things that you want to see? You can see some of them up here. So we've got things like synchronised settlement. So if I was to give you an example, in the UK, if you buy a house, you might be in a chain of 10 houses that are being kind of bought and sold. And when you come to your settlement date, each payment is done individually. You have to wait until the next one happens and happens and happens and happens. What this will allow is essentially all those payments to settle at the same time. So essentially synchronously settling what's there needed for the housing market. We've also built the capability that the service can be available 24/7. So we're looking at what is the industry appetite for extended operating hours, because obviously we only run Monday to Friday, and there may be requirements out there for something more than that. And then we're looking at some non-payment APIs to go with our API suite that we've got already. And then there's some pieces around resilient channels and settlement contingency. So the settlement contingency is basically, if our data centers were completely taken out, we had no way to run the service. We actually have a tertiary capability hosted by a different company, and we're looking at that to see how we can innovate it or if we replace it with something else. And the additional channels for anyone who is in the payments industry, the way organizations send transactions to each other is via SWIFT. Now, if SWIFT were to have a big outage, which they don't often, the entire global payments industry just stopped. There's no way to do settlement. Like, go and make a cup of tea. Hopefully they fixed it by the time you've come back. So what we're doing is we're looking at alternatives to SWIFT as well to kind of build out that resiliency point. And that is it for me, so I will hand back to you.
Yeah, I'm conscious we're a bit over time and standing between you and lunch, so I'll keep this super short. So we just wanted to give you a quick flavour of the fact that the bank's also supporting modernisation in the retail payment side of things, and we're doing that mainly through policies around central bank digital currency and specifically the design of the digital pound. And really, why would we need the digital pound? So it drives innovation, it drives efficiency, it drives choice, but also it kind of helps us share the role of the central bank currency as that anchor of confidence and safety in the monetary system. And, there's two key propositions around the digital pound. One is it's meant to be used for everyday payments, so online, in-store, person to person, and it's meant to be private but not anonymous. So what that means is that you can control how your personal data is used, and the government or the Bank of England cannot access that data, and we will also not program the digital pound or restrict how it's used. This is a really quick, simple model of how the layers within the model, which is, as you'd expect, a core ledger, which is your platform delivering payments functionality, your API layer, which is how intermediates access the core ledger. The intermediates then provide the wallet functionality, which is how you and I access the digital pound. And then as users, we contract with intermediaries to access the pound. And this is just a very quick diagram. Don't worry, I'm not going to go into it. Just wanted to call out the fact that for some of the transactions, we will need some integration with RTGS. And the fact that we've modernized the system means that we can do that and change that functionality and expand it without needing to do that open heart surgery. And again, just to give you a flavor of some of the differences, when we're looking at design principles, they're on the screen. Some of the top things are NFRs like availability, 99.99 with loads of nines, and performance, because we have to be able to settle an average of 30,000 transactions per second. So lots and lots of really interesting things going on in the payments industry, so Kay will definitely not be bored, and a big role for a technology to underpin that agenda. And I think perhaps for us, the most exciting thing is that for many years, we were never at the table when these policy and design decisions were happening, whereas now with this product and platform model, we are really able to help support and advise the bank so that journey to implementation can be a lot smoother for everyone involved. So with that, just a big thanks. Thanks for listening. Sorry for running a bit over time. And thank you for having us here at Taxovenia. Thank you very much.